I knew that a matchup between LSU and South Carolina in the SEC tournament final was going to make headlines, but I did not think that it was going to make headlines for the absolute sheer and utter mayhem that went down on Sunday afternoon in Greenville.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, what's up, y'all? Welcome into Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Caroline Fenton, and I am your host, as I am every single day. And today's edition of Locked On LSU is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. Now, the LSU women's basketball team falls to South Carolina in the SEC Conference Tournament final, 79-72, and we'll break down why that happened, what went wrong for LSU, what went right for the Gamecocks. But that's not even the biggest storyline coming out of this game. That's not even nearly close to the top of the list of the things that I think you want to hear about, that you've been talking about, and surely that the national media has been talking about over the last few hours or so since that game wrapped up in Greenville, South Carolina. Absolute mayhem in that game. Last few minutes of the fourth quarter, it was scrappy and it was physical all game long. Like, you could tell from the very jump that it was like, okay, so this is how it's gonna be today. Like, okay, got it, understood. So it was scrappy all day, and I kind of felt like watching that game, like something's bound to happen here. I didn't think it was going to be what happened, but I thought something is going to happen. Someone is going to get hurt. Tensions are riding far too high with with two teams that constantly find themselves in very high stakes situations. I thought that something's going to happen here. I didn't know what, but I felt it in my bones, and I feel like you probably did too. And my goodness, it was an all-out brawl. It was craziness, absolute mayhem in this game. So let's kind of get in reverse. What exactly happened? What started this bench clearing brawl that completely changed the trajectory of the game is hyperbolic and unfair, but it changed the game for sure. So this is what happened. It's in the fourth quarter. Flau'Jae has the ball. She turns it over. She's very obviously fired up and very frustrated. All of them were fired up and very frustrated. It was so chippy on both sides. It wasn't just Flau'Jae. It wasn't just LSU, but those South Carolina players. I mean, they were talking. They were chirping. So Flau'Jae turns it over. She's very obviously frustrated. South Carolina's Ashlyn Watkins comes by as Ashlyn Watkins is walking back toward the South Carolina bench, and Flau'Jae is walking past her back to the LSU bench. You can see Ashlyn Watkins is talking her talk. She's talking some trash because South Carolina's up a turnover, and if South Carolina could have capitalized there, it really felt like that would have been kind of the fork in LSU. That game would have been over. So Ashlyn Watkins is kind of talking her stuff. And Flau'Jae, very visibly frustrated, kind of shoves her. If you're watching on the YouTube, she gives her a little elbow, gives her a little, just lets her know, like, look, what you're saying, I don't appreciate. So South Carolina's Kamilla Cardoso, which if you are not familiar with that name, Kamilla Cardoso is a mammoth. I mean, she is a mammoth, a behemoth of a woman. She's so tall. She is 6'7". And any game she plays, you can tell who's that one. Like, who's she out on the court, because she towers over every single other player out on the court. So Kamilla Cardoso sees Flau'Jae give the elbow to her teammate Ashlyn Watkins. She doesn't like it. She doesn't appreciate it. So she lets Flau'Jae know. Kamilla Cardoso shoves Flau'Jae Johnson hard enough that Flau'Jae gets thrown back and she's down on the floor. So Kamilla Cardoso shoves Flau'Jae down on the floor, and all hell breaks loose. The LSU bench completely clears. The South Carolina bench completely clears. Both coaching staffs, not just Mulkey and Dawn Staley, but assistant coaches included, they all try and break it up. You see security trying to break the fight up. You see a man jump from the stands to the scoring table and starts to shove some South Carolina players. That is who we would later find out is Flau'Jae's brother. So he sees Kamilla Cardoso pushing his sister. He jumps down to try and, give her a little bit of backup. The security takes him, reportedly from ESPN, takes him away in handcuffs. It is all out bench clearing brawl. All hell broke loose. I mean, it was wild. I don't want to say it was unlike anything I've ever seen before, because we see brawls a lot in any sport, especially in basketball. But man, like that was up there with the factor of the level of just like, what the hell just happened? Like, this is absolutely insane. So the refs deliberated on it for a long time. Everyone started to cool down a little bit. The refs were trying to decide, okay, how do we move forward with this? So it was an intentional foul called on Flau'Jae, which very fair and very justified. Kamilla Cardoso gets disqualified and tossed for fighting. And then every single other player that was on the bench, so every player that was not currently on the court at that time, 5 for LSU and 5 for South Carolina, every other player gets tossed, sent to the locker room. So there's about 2.5, give or take, ish minutes left in the game. So LSU and South Carolina, the only players that they had available were those 5 players each that were on the court at the time that the altercation started to happen. Every single other player got tossed. Crazy. Just wild. And everyone, while the refs were deliberating, there was this commentary and this discussion on social media of, what do you do? The refs have made several questionable calls throughout the entirety of the game. So were they going to mess this one up too? I thought it was pretty clear and simple. You toss Flau'Jae and you toss Kamilla Cardoso. The two, Flau'Jae really kind of started it. She threw the elbow. Kamilla Cardoso escalated the situation. So I thought both of them are out. Throw them both out, suspend them both for a game, for the first game of the NCAA tournament, and then from there, move forward. I frankly thought that that's how they were going to handle it. I don't really have an issue with how they handled it. There was one kind of miscommunication on the broadcast, where the broadcast initially said that every player that got thrown, so the entire bench for both sides, none of those players would have been available for the first round of the NCAA tournament. So I'm thinking, like, this is massive. 2 of the best teams in the country, and they're only going to have 5 players available for the entirety of a tournament game. Like, talk about how that could completely derail how we expect the tournament to go. 2 teams that are expected to find themselves in the Elite 8, in the Final Four. I mean, they get tossed in the first round of the tournament, or the first round at least that they play, because they only have 5 players available. I thought that is, talk about, a season-altering outcome. On the broadcast, they later clarified that the only player that would not be available for the next game, so the first round of the NCAA tournament, would be Kamilla Cardoso, because she was qualified for fighting. It wasn't the players that got tossed for kind of coming off the bench onto the floor and getting involved into the fight. So LSU for right now has everyone available that they had available for this past game. Will have everyone available for the upcoming game. The only player that will not be eligible to play in the first round of the NCAA tournament is South Carolina's Kamilla Cardoso. So, whoa, not really how I expected this game to go. But if you were watching that game, you probably felt it kind of ramping up a little bit. So I have 2 things, 2 takeaways, 2 thoughts, 2 takes on what we saw on Sunday. Not necessarily on the court, basketball as it goes, but more so the fight and how there might be just a larger takeaway from that. So we'll get into that coming up next. We'll also get into my takeaways from the actual basketball of the game. So we'll do that coming up next. All right, I want to tell you about Amazon Fire TV. So Fire TV, if you're not familiar with it, it is your destination for sports, from live games, highlights, in-depth analysis. Plus, Fire TV offers amazing viewing experiences with smart TVs, as well as the Fire TV stick that you can just plug into your existing TV that provides access to millions of movies and TV episodes, as well as free and live TV. So don't worry if you don't have a smart TV. Just get that Amazon Fire Stick, plug it right in, and you'll get access to everything that you could get on an app on a smart TV with Fire TV. Whether it's opening weekend for baseball, which I'm so excited is quickly approaching, or the college basketball tournament, we're only just a couple weeks away, and I'm so excited about it. You are going to want to have a Fire TV. So, Fire TV recently created Fire TV channels to deliver a constant supply of the latest videos from your favorite sports brands, and it's all for free. Who would not love that? That includes all of us at Locked On and most of the big pro leagues and college conferences as well. Fire TV channels lets you dive into all of the game analysis, there's highlights and so much more to keep you up to date on all of the latest in the world of sports, March Madness, NBA, MLB, and so much more. Not to mention great news, entertainment, gaming, travel, cooking videos as well. Whatever you're interested in, sports and otherwise, check out Fire TV channels on Fire TV and Alexa devices. If you haven't checked out Fire TV channels, you should. Trust me on this. To learn more, visit www.amazon.com/lockedonfiretv. All right, I want to tell you about GameTime. So, GameTime, I'm going to be completely honest with you, that's the first place I go when I'm looking for tickets for anything. Games, concerts, comedy shows, plays, musicals, really anything that you need to get tickets for. GameTime is my go-to option because you shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. GameTime has last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. So I think my favorite thing about the GameTime app is that when you click on a certain seat or ticket that you want to buy, you get a full 360-degree view of exactly what your in-game or in concert or in-event view will be like. There's nothing worse than getting to an event and realizing, oh, great, there's a massive view obstructing pole right in front of me. What a waste of money. You get full clarity with the GameTime app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, rolling along here, Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and LSU falls in the SEC tournament final, 79-72 against the undefeated South Carolina Gamecocks, which if you missed it on Saturday night, almost lost that game. South Carolina did against Tennessee. It was a literally last second three from Kamilla Cardoso to win it. Kamilla Cardoso's very first career 3-point. So, I mean, it was drama all weekend long in Greenville for the SEC women's basketball tournament. But the biggest headline of Sunday is the bench clearing brawl. Flau'Jae, throws an elbow to Ashlyn Watkins, Kamilla Cardoso, and all of her 6'7" self knocks Flau'Jae to the ground. Bench is clear, all out brawl. We got family members involved. It was insanity. A couple of things that I take away from that. First and foremost, I don't like blaming the refs for losses or for things in general because I think it's overdone. And frankly, I think it's pretty lazy because I think that whenever there are fans that are upset about a certain call one way or another, usually that's not the only reason why you may have lost that game. That there are several things that you could go back and point to and say, well, you turned the ball over here, you missed a scoring opportunity here, so on and so you dumb penalties here. That it's not just that one decision by the refs that may have cost you a game. That it's several other things that just didn't go your way or you didn't do right. So I'm all for, nitpicking the refs when that's justified. I just don't like that to be my go-to. So let me just couch what I'm about to say with that. But I do think the refs need to be a lot more involved than they were before that brawl broke out. Like I said, it was chippy from the very, very beginning. And there were several questionable no calls that I thought, look, this, like, the tensions are rising here. And it's just like up more and more and more and more. And it was going to get to a point where it was just too much. Refs needed to take control of the game. I didn't feel like the refs had a good control of the game, nor do I feel like the refs were controlling the tensions. So I put it a little bit on the refs, honestly, for letting it get to that point, because we had almost an entirely full game of chippiness and physicality before that brawl broke out. I thought the refs had ample opportunity to try and interfere, to try and say, look, we're gonna draw the line here. We have to take control of this game. So refs, it's been a problem, honestly, all season long. Coach Yo, Ole Miss's head coach, after the LSU Ole Miss game, mentioned it when Kamilla took the hard hit that she did, and thank goodness, update on last year post, she was out of the hospital. She went to the hospital, was stretched off the court in that Ole Miss game, took a really scary fall and hit her head hard, the back of her head hard on the court. She couldn't move her legs. She was stretched out. She was sent to the hospital. She received treatment in the hospital, was observed for a concussion. So she was released on Saturday and was watching the game on Sunday from the hotel. So at least so far, so good. News from last year, POA. Who knows, what comes next for last year, POA, if she'll be available for the NCAA tournament. A concussion is something that's incredibly sensitive, and it's really on a case-by-case basis. Like, there's really not a fair window to say when they'll be back, or I know after just a week she'll be fine. It's really just how she responds to treatment and rest. So really scary scene from last year, POA, on Saturday night against Ole Miss, but good to hear that she is expected at least to make a full recovery, that she had feeling in her extremities, and she was released from the hospital on Saturday. So quick side note, that is, I think we needed to have that side note on last year, POA. But my initial point was Coach Yo, in response to that hit, she said, look, the refs need to clarify what's a fair block and what's not a fair block. Because, look, there's a level of physicality in this game that I think is necessary, but there's also a level of physicality in this game that you can bring it down a notch to avoid things like this from happening. So first and foremost, I gotta give critique where critique is due, and that's on the refs. The second thing is, this LSU team needs to find their chill, honestly. Like, it wasn't just Flau'Jae. Angel Reese was very obviously flustered pretty much throughout the entirety of the game. And look, I understand you're in a championship game against a team that's incredibly talented, against a team that's incredibly physical, against a team that, frankly, top to bottom, just has a size advantage on you. That's frustrating. Emotions ride high in these situations. And you want to see these players get emotional, because that shows you that it means something to them. But there is a certain level, it gets to a certain point where you have to take control of yourself if the refs aren't going to do it for you, which they obviously weren't. You have to know and to recognize when to just shake it off, when to not let the outside noise, whether it be crowd noise or questionable ref calls, or if it's the other team that's kind of maybe bullying you around a little bit, whether it's physically or verbally, like, you have to just tune it out. You have to tune it out, because whenever you let your emotions get the best of you, that's when you find yourself in situations like this. Like, LSU is lucky, very lucky, that they're going to have Flau'Jae, at least as far as we all know now. I don't know if the SEC is going to go back and relook into this, and maybe there'll be even further discipline for Flau'Jae or other players. But for right now, as of now, LSU is really lucky that they have Flau'Jae for the first round of the NCAA tournament. It could have been way, way worse than this. You have to take control of yourself. You have to find at least a little bit of self-discipline. And that's a double-edged sword, right? Because that's what makes this team so great, is they play with so much fire and passion and attitude, and I love it. That's the identity of this team. But you can still play with fire and passion and attitude and not find yourselves in these tough situations that could potentially be the difference of a win or an early exit in the NCAA tournament. So, frankly, that's a team leadership thing, and that's a Kim Mulkey thing. Like, you need to know when to cool it off a little bit, even when you're frustrated, even when emotions are riding high. a few on the court takeaways. That's what I want to get into coming up next after just a few words from our sponsors. All right, I want to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. So, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the right tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And the great thing about LinkedIn is that it's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than a billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals that you cannot find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. And hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. And it's so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small business owners are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. So let LinkedIn Jobs take care of the hard part, take care of the heavy lifting for you. And the best part, it's for free. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, rolling along here, Locked On LSU. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Free available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we are part of the Locked On Network, your team every single day. And speaking of Locked On, we've launched the first ever national sports streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's available on Amazon Fire TV as well in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So find Locked On Sports Today right now, available on the free Fire TV channels app. All right, LSU falls 2 to South Carolina in the SEC tournament final. Really, overall, my takeaway of why LSU lost this game, South Carolina was just bigger. Physically, they're just bigger. South Carolina is deeper, have a deeper bench than you. And overall, South Carolina was just physical. Overall, South Carolina just shot better. Overall, South Carolina was just the better team on Sunday. But that doesn't mean that LSU didn't play hard as hell. That does not mean that LSU was able to make this game really uncomfortable for South Carolina and very interesting for themselves. I thought they got out to a great start. Early in the game, got out to a 13-7 lead, but you started to see, at least late in the second quarter going into halftime, I at least felt like there was a certain level of fatigue that started to set in. That South Carolina, in all of their physicality and how big they were just kind of bullying up on LSU. And those are certain things that, frankly, I don't know if you can fix at this point in the season, because if someone is just bigger than you, well, you can't change that. At this point, it's conditioning, and it's also that LSU, prior to that South Carolina game, they played two really physical and rough games. Against Auburn, they were all taking hard hits. And Angel Reese exited that game early with an ankle injury that was clearly bothering her against Auburn. She finished the game on the sidelines on the bike. Against Ole Miss, another really physical and hard-fought game. I mentioned last year Poa taking that really hard hit that eventually, she ended up in the hospital that night. So it was an emotional game. Seeing your teammate in that condition, that's scary. They were physically taxing games. So by Sunday, they were exhausted and physically drained and physically beat up. That's not the kind of condition that you want your team to be in going against such a physically tough team in South Carolina. The other thing was the shots just weren't falling, at least from the paint. I mean, from three, LSU had a pretty decent day, 43, just shy of 43% from three, but less than 40% from the field. It's just, frankly, it's not good enough to beat a team like South Carolina that can, just shoot on a dime. And any given night, they can have a hot shooter. On Sunday, it was Flau'Jae who had 24 points. On any other given night, it can be Te-Hina Paopao, who is one of the best three-point shooters in the SEC, if not in the country. And really, overall, Te-Hina Paopao wasn't not impactful in the slightest, but wasn't didn't have a take over the game kind of day. Overall, 12 points from Tina Paopao. But just wasn't the best night offensively from, I guess, afternoon. Wasn't the best offensively, wasn't the best game for LSU offensively. So it was tough. Like, it was a tough fought week. I thought that LSU had 2 really great wins. That Ole Miss game was a blast. And then against South Carolina, I think it was a really hard fought game. And it's a couple of things that makes me feel equally encouraged and discouraged about how far LSU can get in the NCAA tournament. Encouraged that they were able to go toe-to-toe against South Carolina after 2 very difficult physical and emotional games before that against Auburn and Ole Miss. That they were able to go toe-to-toe and keep themselves in the game, keep things interesting. They never let South Carolina just run away with it until the last, 30 seconds of the game when Mulkey just let 15 seconds off the clock without forcing a foul. So they were able to hold their own. And I don't want to act like LSU doesn't belong in the same court as South Carolina, because they very obviously do. In the 2 games that LSU has played against South Carolina, it's been very tightly contested games. And LSU has looked pretty solid in those games. But the reason that I feel a little bit discouraged is because LSU just simply doesn't have the depth that some other teams have. And that has been an issue that has plagued LSU from the very beginning of the season. We knew that was going to be an issue for LSU the entirety of the season. That what is going to be the status of last year POA? I don't know. Frankly, I don't know if anyone out of us know the answer to that question. Mulkey and trainers included. It's just how she's able to recover over these next few days. So you already may not have her, at least for a couple of games in the tournament, possibly even the entirety of the tournament. And that's not me reporting anything. Frankly, I don't know. But you can't afford very many injuries. You can't afford to not have your top 5 to 7 to 8 unavailable in the NCAA tournament. So the depth, of course, is an issue, and that is an issue that can rear its ugly head in a tournament setting. But overall, it was a good day from LSU basketball. They were able to keep things interesting, maybe a little bit too interesting there. But you just got to just reel it in, reel the emotions in a little bit. I don't want to take Superman's cape away, so to speak, because I think that attitude and that edge is absolutely part of their game. But it can't become a part of the game like that, like we saw on Sunday. But what a fun tournament on the women's side this past week. Men's tournament starts in Nashville starting on Wednesday. We'll have a full preview and breakdown of the men's SEC tournament coming up on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.